Okay, it's 2 o'clock, so thank you for the attendees that are in the session right now. Welcome to your CACRAO session. Just to kind of go over some quick points before I hand it over to your panelists. There will be a quick survey after the session, so it'll take you, just a minute to fill out some questions. This whole session will be recorded and placed on our CACRAO website, www.cacrao.org, and also visit the website to sign up for more sessions. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A and your panelists will get to them as they can. Yeah, so if you have any questions, you can either use the Q&A, save them to the end. I'm sure the panelists will share their information with you just so they can contact you after as well. If you have, like I said, if you have any questions, get in contact with them and we'll hand it over to the panelists.
All right. William or Mark, can you guys tell me when you can see my screen here? I'm going to try and put it into presentation mode and hopefully that takes off. Does that look good there?
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay. Welcome, everybody. We're excited to have you here this afternoon to talk a little bit about admissions and athletics and how we all work together. We have 3 panelists here today from various institutions across North and South Carolina, and we're excited to meet with you all, whether you're a student or a family member or a parent, college counselor. We're excited that you're here. So this afternoon, we're going to talk a little bit about how admissions offices and athletics offices work together to hopefully create the most seamless process for you as a potential student athlete. So we'll talk a little bit about where you kind of start in that process, best practices in the recruiting process, how to make the most out of that recruiting process, and then maybe a little bit about the COVID and pandemic's impact on what that might look like right now. So I'm going to see if I can move us forward here on the slides and show you this graphic that has a map of North and South Carolina, and we'll do some brief introductions. I'll start. My name is Jasmine. I work as a Senior Assistant Director of Admissions at Queen's University of Charlotte. We aptly named. We are located in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is right over, as you can see, the South Carolina line. We are a small, private, comprehensive offering majors in a ton of different areas, located right in the heart of Charlotte. We are a Division II institution. I was a student athlete, and I currently work as our athletics liaison in our admissions office. So I'm really passionate about collegiate athletics and excited to chat with y'all today. And I'll turn it to Mark if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Mark Fox at Presbyterian College in Clinton, South Carolina. We're that middle star there, sort of in the middle of everything. And PC has about 1,000 undergrads. Our mascot is the Blue Hose. We have a lot of fun with that. Unfortunately, our opponents do too. And we're Division I with 18 different sports, everything from men's and women's wrestling to acrobatics and tumbling to football and basketball, you name it. So I'm excited to chat with you guys and give you a little bit more detail into how we do admissions and athletics here at PC.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is William Montz. I serve as director for traditional admission here at Anderson University. Anderson University is Division II athletically as well, just like Queens. We're a four-year private Christian liberal arts institution. We are located in Anderson, South Carolina, which is about 30 minutes outside of Greenville and just south of Clemson University. But we're excited to have you all joining us and to talk a little bit about admission and athletics and how we work together. Jasmine, you want me to start this thing off? All right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I forgot to mention, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat box. We'll probably wait until we get towards the end to answer those, but either William or Mark will be monitoring that question box, and we'll hopefully get to all your questions. If we don't, we will follow up with you afterwards. But over to you.
Awesome. And I also failed to mention, I was an assistant men's basketball coach, been in college athletics for about 10 years, 5 as an assistant here, and then was in Georgia, North Carolina, and Kentucky. And so fully understand the process that you guys are going through as far as what this athletic variable really adds to the process of searching for a college. So first question, where do I start and finding that fit? So you can see some bullets there as far as just participating in college athletics. First thing is making the decision to even play college sports. I know some of you may be going back and forth as to, I love high school sports. I'm pretty competitive, just not real sure if I want to continue this thing. Or for sure, I'm looking to play sports in college at the college level. And so that's really the first question to ask yourself is what do you want to do? Some things to consider, really 30,000 foot view here as far as what this will look like at the college level versus high school. And you can see the bullets there: managing time, managing academics. Those are probably the two biggest things that you will quickly learn, honestly, regardless of whether you play athletics in college or not. Those are two skills that you're going to have to learn how to juggle and be efficient. I will say, for those of you that do plan to play a sport in college, your coaches oftentimes help you out with that. There will be mandatory study halls that you will probably have to attend for your classes. And so for a lot of you that end up playing sports in college, you're going to learn and / be forced to learn how to manage your time and manage your academics. And I'll just say, a lot of times the athletes are very structured and are very disciplined when it comes to managing those aspects. So that's a little bit of what your college experience will look like. There will be different seasons, obviously, depending on what sport you play, from your off-season workouts to in-season, to pretty much going back to workouts again. As much as it's not a job, it looks very similar to one. If you're playing sports in college, the commitment is heightened. And I would argue that no matter what level that you might be looking to play college sports at, whether it's Division III, Division II, Division I, NCAA, other affiliates, there's always that commitment. And every institution wants to win and compete. And so regardless of the level, that commitment is strong. Finding the right fit. So as you're going through this process, and we will probably be the millionth person that may have told you, but you are looking at a school that's hopefully recruiting you for your athletic ability. But I just want to encourage you all to look at the majors that they're offering. What are you interested in studying? Are those things lining up? What type of institution do you want to go to as far as the culture there, the activities there, things that you are interested in doing? I really strongly encourage you to look at those things when you're making the decision along with the sport. And then as far as impacting your future, I've told athletes that I've talked to for years, if you do choose to play sport in college, it's a strong resume builder. Most employers know the time commitment, the rigor, the adversity that athletes face. And so those are strong qualities that will help you in the job world when you start looking for jobs. Next slide. So let's talk admission and athletics. And these are really just some reminders. So as much as hopefully that head coach is recruiting you, or assistant coach is recruiting you to play sport at their particular institution, sometimes the admission part can kind of get lost in the communication. But just remember that, and you can see the bullets there, you must be admitted before you actually enroll at that institution. You don't necessarily have to before you do other things with athletics, but at some point you must be admitted to that school. And so be mindful of the different requirements that the institutions you're interested have as far as admission requirements. You'll need to get those in just like any other student going through the admission process. Most all those documents will need to be submitted officially. Even if you're submitting them to the NCAA, you'll still need to submit your official high school transcripts, official test scores, whatever other requirements there are for the admission process at that institution. So just don't forget about that. And honestly, the earlier the better that you can start doing that, because then you really can start to focus on the athletic side as far as the different things that you need to get done there. And then there will be different check boxes that need to be checked as you're going through the application process, and even after. You may need to attend an orientation at that school. You've got to fill out a housing application most of the time at that institution. So there are different check boxes that you'll want to keep in mind as you're going through the admission process. And then lastly, continue to communicate with both. Don't just get so zoned in on the admission side that you aren't talking to your coach, and vice versa. Don't get so zoned in to communicating with your coaches that you're not communicating with the counselors on the admission side. We're all here to help and work together to help make it as smooth a process as possible for you all.
Okay, thanks, William. So kind of context set there, understanding where we're starting and how our offices are working together. This is just, I won't go over everything on the slide here, but I wanted to put it in a bit of a timeline for you. Some of you on the session today might be 9th graders all the way up through 12th graders, or maybe your counselors or family members, but this shows you just a layout of some things to keep in everything, but these are some things to keep in mind as you're working through the recruiting process, because as William said, the earlier you can get on top of things, the more that you will have through the process. So in the 9th and 10th grades, some students, and this is not just student athletes, but some students often mistake that your grades in these 9th and 10th grades still really matter. Colleges are going to see your 9th through 12th grade grades, and often if you're applying, so those 9th and 10th grades really do matter here. You're taking approved courses through your high school. So we're talking a lot about NCAA here. William mentioned, and it's very much true, that there are other organizations where you can play collegiate athletics. The NCAA is just the most recognized and probably one that people think about. The NCAA has to approve that you're eligible to compete at an NCAA institution, and they do so. They have to render you eligible academically and amateurly, but we won't really touch upon that. Academically, they have to say that you're eligible. So you're taking certain courses, and you can talk with your college counselor or your school counselor to make sure you're doing that. You're going to register a profile page with the NCAA Eligibility Center. This is where all of your documents will go so that they can certify your eligibility. There's a fee to register an NCAA Eligibility Center account. You can get a fee waiver, but you'll need to do that if you're interested in competing in NCAA athletics, particularly at the Division I and II level. And then you're starting to think about types of schools you want to maybe consider contacting coaches, visiting schools. You can always email a coach and say, hey, I'm interested in learning a little bit more about the recruiting process at your school. Can you please share that with me? Sending over maybe if highlight tapes is the thing for your sport, if it's sending over times, if you're maybe a runner or a swimmer, whatever those things are, getting in contact with coaches. In 11th grade, you're ramping that up a little bit. You're continuing to complete those courses. You're likely taking standardized testing. This year is wonky with testing. I totally know that and understand that, and all of us on the panel here are very much aware of that. Typically, you will need to take a standardized test in order to be eligible for the NCAA. This year's a little bit different, and I think Mark might talk about that towards the end of today, but typically you will need to take a standardized test. You'll have to send in your transcript and your test scores to the NCAA Eligibility Center, so you'll send those in there. You're visiting schools, you're talking with coaches, and maybe in the 11th grade year, you're verbally committing. You might hear sometimes students come to school and they, oh, I committed to so-and-so institution. I committed to play at Presbyterian. If they're in 11th grade, they have verbally committed. It is not a binding agreement, though it's still exciting. I remember when I verbally committed. I'm not trying to take that away from you, but it is not official until you have signed a national letter of intent. And as you can see on the timeline there, you don't do that until you're here. So in your senior year, you're finishing up all your courses. You're requesting what's called your final amateurism certification, essentially saying that you have never been a professional athlete. And you're uploading, or your counselor at your school is uploading your final documents, transcript, test scores, that sort of stuff. And then you're signing your national letter of intent. I'm going to play at Anderson University. So that's just a brief breakdown of what you're looking at. There are a few things you see here. I'm going to read these off to you. I'm not necessarily going to touch on every single one. I think you can probably read those best practices in the recruitment process. A few that are really important is being open to institutions of all types. Some students get in their mind, I'm going to be a Division I student athlete. That's a great goal. That's fantastic. Understand that your perfect fit, your fit for a school might not be a Division I school. It might be a Division II, Division III. It might be an NAIA school or another institution. So don't rule something out just because it doesn't have that label on it that you think is the best, right? Making sure you're contacting coaches, visiting campuses. A lot of students often think, well, I'm really good at basketball. That coach will find me. They probably won't unless you do some sort of outreach or you're like the top 1% of the top 1%. You have to do some sort of outreach to get in contact with those coaches. And it needs to be you. It doesn't need to be your mom or your dad or grandma or Coach Montz or whoever it is. It needs to be you, right? Making sure you're sending over that information so they know a little bit about you. Having realistic expectations. I remember when I was going through the recruiting process, at the time, Arizona, the University of Arizona was the big softball team. And I was like, oh, I'm going to play for Arizona. I'm going to go out there and compete Division I. I was never going to compete at University of Arizona. I am not that good. I was not that good. I will never be that good. But I knew that eventually once I came to the realization. Understand that you're not going to be a great fit athletically or otherwise at every institution. So if you're struggling to understand that realistic expectation, maybe talk to a coach, a trusted coach about that. They can probably help you out. Communicating clearly with admissions offices if you are going through that athletics process. It's just helpful for us to know. We will certainly confirm all of that with our athletics coaches and our athletics department. So know that, but it's always good when you're having those conversations to mention that you're in communication with coaches. And then just thinking about life outside of athletics. One example is academic programs. There might be institutions where if you say, I want to be a volleyball player and I want to be a nursing student, those things can't coexist. Institutions have policies against that. Or it might be you can't do this sort of internship because you're a student athlete and you might have to make those tough choices. Just understand that those tough choices might happen. Oftentimes at smaller institutions or at Division II or III institutions, you have a little bit less of that sacrifice or that compromise, but make sure you understand what life outside of athletics will look like for you, because athletics can be taken away in the blink of an eye with an injury, a cutting of a program, students getting burnt out, and you don't want to be in an institution that you're not happy with. Experience does not continue. So these are just some general best practices. These on the screen here are often just inverted showed you, but just to reiterate, these are things you should not do, okay? Discounting institutions simply based upon the fact that they're a Division II. Well, I can't, I'm not going to do Division II. I guarantee you, if you compete at Anderson or Queens at a high-level D2, you're competing with highly elite athletes, just the same as you would at Presbyterian, right? So understand that. One big one on this list here is assuming that being eligible equates to being admissible. You will have to meet certain eligibility requirements to compete at the Division I or Division II level in the NCAA, and those are academic requirements, certain GPA and test score requirements. And we won't go into that here, but understand that you do have to meet certain eligibility requirements. That does not mean, if you meet those minimum requirements, that you are admissible to an institution. If you met the very minimum basic requirements as a 2.3 and whatever test score that equates to, and you tried to apply to Queens, you would likely not be admitted to Queens with that minimum, right, bare thing there. So just because you say, well, I'm eligible to compete, doesn't mean that you're admissible at any given institution. There is an institution out there for you. There's an institution, probably many, for everybody, but understand that admissibility requirements are different at institutions. And then, not understanding the different roles between admissions and athletics. So I had a student one time who said, oh, well, I'm going to send in my application to the wrestling coach and he'll let me know if I'm admitted. No, he will not. We will let you know if you're admitted, and the athletics coach can determine your, strength at wrestling, right? I don't want to evaluate you as a wrestler, and I don't want my wrestling coach to evaluate you as a potential student for my admissions office, right? So those things are not the same. And then a big one here that I'll wrap up with is just not informing institutions of your final decision. This goes for admissions and athletics. If you have come to the decision that you are going to choose Anderson University over Presbyterian and over Queens, fantastic, we are happy for you. But if you never tell the baseball coach that you're going to do that, and maybe you get down the line, you kind of ghosted that baseball coach, and you get down the line 2 years and you're looking to transfer because of something, that happened or whatever, and you burnt that bridge at Presbyterian because you didn't let the coach know he doesn't want you to play for him anymore. Or just letting admissions offices know. If you let me know that you've chosen somewhere else, I'm not going to be angry with you. It's one less phone call I have to make come springtime. So please just let us know when you make those decisions. It's an important thing to do, and it's just respectful in that regard. So those are some of your best and worst practices in the recruiting process. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of good information, some tips as you're navigating this process. I didn't think, but hopefully that's what the questions will be for towards the end. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark to talk a little bit about affordability.
Thank you, Jasmine. I like to start with making a statement regarding what I hear from a lot of students, and they think that if I play college sports, I have to have an athletic scholarship, and that's not the case. And just to give you some perspective, last year, or I guess this fall, we had 140 new freshman athletes, and only about a third of those were on scholarship. So there were a lot of walk-ons here at PC, qualified athletes that were admissible, that were receiving lots of different types of financial aid, just not athletic scholarship. So let's talk about how those scholarships, institutional aids work. So athletic scholarships themselves come in two varieties. So you're going to have the full scholarship, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's going to cover full costs, sometimes even more than that, depending on your sport, and like maybe may cover books. It may cover all the way up to the cost of attendance. Also, when you talk about partial scholarships, the NCAA for us in Division I had some legislation here for I guess until August 1 of this year, where we could only combine athletic scholarships with merit scholarships, or we could combine merit scholarships with need-based grants for athletes. As of August 1, it seems like they may allow us to combine all of those together regarding students who have need. So we're still trying to sort that out. But the merit scholarship is going to be your academic award. It's going to be based off of your application, your GPA, test score, class rank, those type of items. And every school does them a little differently, but certainly something that you can stack at a place like PC with your athletic scholarship, your partial athletic scholarship. And our coaches here like to give partial athletic scholarships because it allows them to spread their athletic dollars out among multiple athletes, and to hopefully build a strong team, because their athletic dollars go further because their students are earning merit scholarships as well. Also, on top of need-based grants, institutions can even add your state money, your federal money in those packages. And you can even in South Carolina, you have lottery scholarships that can even sweeten the pot a little bit more. Don't forget about outside scholarships as well. And so you add all those up, and what you're looking for is to find the lowest net price. And that's why I want to come back to that point I made earlier. I've seen students pass up a lower net price package because they want that reward to say athletic dollars. And so that student essentially has paid more to go to the school to have just athletic scholarship on there. And so I don't want anyone like you to pay more to receive that athletic scholarship letter in there. At PC, we're going to try to advise you on what is going to be the best net price for you. All right. So how has COVID-19 impacted athletics? Well, I think back in the summer, we were worried that COVID-19 were going to change college sports as we know it. They were going to go away, and we did see some of that. We heard headlines like Sanford had cut 11 sports, but I looked at the Associated Press report that came out in June, and it looks like there were only about 51 Division I athletic sports that were terminated, and the same thing for Division II was about 56. And in the Carolinas, there are only 4 schools that have terminated sports teams. So COVID has not completely changed sports as we know it in college. But what I will say, it has affected budgets somewhat. And so what I'm hearing from some of our coaches here is that they don't necessarily think it's going to impact their scholarships, but they do think it's going to impact some of their recruitment budgets. So their ability to go out and travel and see you. And so what that has done is that's forced a lot of them online right now. We'll talk about that here in a second. But one other thing to keep in mind as you think about how COVID has impacted this cycle here, this recruitment cycle, and maybe even the future one, is that these students that were spring athletes in Division I have already been granted waivers to have a whole nother year of eligibility. So that may take up a roster spot. That may prevent coaches from having lots and lots of roster spots that they typically have. And I believe Division II has already done the same thing for the fall athletes. In Division I, I know has proposed it, but hasn't completely decided on that item for the fall athletes. So there may not be as many roster spots available here in this next recruiting cycle. But back to the coaches. So the coaches have been in a dead period in Division I since March. So you can see the dead period definition there, but essentially they can't have face-to-face contact with you, go see you play, that type of thing. And so they've gotten pretty creative. I read an article the other day about how a coach invited a student to campus, didn't meet him though, but they gave him, he was in his car on the speakerphone, basically giving a tour to the student who was in another car behind them on a speakerphone of the campus. So they've gotten creative, but most of them have moved online. So my advice to you is, if you're not online, if you don't have a highlight tape, if you don't have profiles on the various sites, that's where you need to go to catch them. Fill out the questionnaires on our websites regarding athletics. Also, email the coaches. Our coaches here at PC, some are better at checking the questionnaires, some are better at checking their email. I always recommend doing both, so hopefully you'll get their attention. And they should be responsive right now, considering, again, they can't get out and go and see you face to face. But the dead period for Division I ends at the end of the month, and I believe it's opened up already, maybe for Division II. But also, one thing to keep in mind that benefits you guys is that the NCAA has recognized that initial eligibility here is a little harder to determine in this current climate. And so they've waived test scores as well. And so you have to essentially meet just the GPA criteria. And that's my phone ringing. That's actually the lacrosse coach. Perfect timing. But you actually have to meet the GPA requirement. And if you took pass-fail courses in the spring, those past courses actually will count toward your core credit requirements. So the NCAA is trying to keep the looking out for and passing policies that are in the best interest of you, the prospective student athlete, but also in the best interest of the current student athlete. So I think that's all I have, Jasmine. And so I guess we can open it up for questions. I did have one, Jasmine, that I wanted to toss to you. Because if I remember right, Queens has swimming, right?
Yes.
Okay, and so it was a question came in there, and I wasn't completely sure how to answer it, but was what's the best way for a swimmer to get noticed?
Be fast. The best way for a swimmer to get noticed is have documented times. So you've competed at, your high school regional tournament or state tournament, or if you do, outside of high school travel swim organization and you've competed in a regional tournament or a statewide or a national tournament and have recorded times, sending those over to coaches. Certainly care about other things. I don't want, they're caring about you as a person and what type of swimmer you are and that sort of thing. But in a sport like swimming and track, cross country, down to how fast you are.
Yeah, I was going to say there's another question in the feed of a track and field runner as far as best steps to get noticed. I would say very similar to swimming. Certain sports have times, and it and honestly makes it a little bit easier as far as sending that information in. Those numbers aren't going to lie. A couple other things I wanted to add as far as getting noticed. A lot of schools will have elite camps. So not your typical kid camp, right? The ones where your prospects coming for different camps because you want to play college sports. Now, obviously you would want to be interested in that school before you attended their elite camp. But that is one way to make sure that you're going to get in front of that coach. And so I would encourage you to look at the schools that you're interested in. And if they have elite camps or prospect camps, things like that, then attend those. The other thing I would say is now, as Jasmine pointed out, you need to do the legwork. You need to be the ones trying to contact individuals at that institution. However, if you've got a head coach that will talk and fight on your behalf, then I would encourage you to have the head coach call. If the head coach is a little hesitant, that may mean the head coach might think that you might be better fit at a different level. And so that's another time for you to really kind of be honest with yourself on where you potentially would best compete. But I do know that coaches talk to coaches and they have a lot of respect for each other. So anytime that you can get your head coach to call on your behalf, I think is beneficial. Couple other questions I'm seeing in the feed. Should you consider talking with a coach if he is interested in you, even if they might not have the major you want to pursue? I think that's, case by case. Each one of you are going to have make or breaks and things that are more important to you than others. And so if you're not totally sold, the other thing is you may change your major. Students all the time will change their major in college. There aren't too many that know exactly what you want to do. And so I would say, yes, I think it might be worth continuing to pursue that institution if they've got a major that's close to something that you might be interested in. Not totally foregoing that, but I think that would be a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I think sometimes students too get really caught up on the word of a major. Like, I want to be a criminal justice major, right? That is the thing I'm looking for. And if I don't see criminal justice listed, I'm not going to look any further into that college. You can have a lot of degrees and do criminal justice. I was talking to one of our legal studies professors this summer, and he was saying I don't like that degree, right? Get a degree in something else, go into, do an internship in that area, whatever. You can do psychology, you can do business, you can do sociology, so many things. And that's just one example, but when a student discounts an institution just because you don't see that one little label, it's the same as I'm going to discount that institution because they're not a Division I. It's the same thing, do your exploring and asking questions.
And talk to admissions.
Yeah, exactly. Were there other questions? I saw a few popping up, but obviously I don't want to click too many things with sharing my screen. Were there any other questions that we didn't get to yet, guys?
One that's still on there is SAT, ACT test scores required for school this year. They are not correct as far as athletics.
Correct. Yeah, that's correct.
As far as institutions, students, I would just say continue to contact the institutions that you're interested in. whether it might be a test optional institution for this year, test flexible, I would say means very similar to test optional. But you will see a lot of institutions doing that if they haven't in the past, simply because they're just are limited. We understand the issues with tests being available at this point in time.
Yeah, definitely. Feel free, you all, to submit some more questions. We finished up a few minutes early and have plenty of time to answer some questions from you all. So whether it's about, athletic eligibility or recruitment or how we work with admissions or anything like that, please feel free to share those in the chat box.
So I have a question for, I guess, you two, and maybe a little bit of a discussion as we wait on a couple questions. How do you guys go about your athletic admissions reviews, and when does that happen?
Mm-hmm. William, you wanna go first?
Sure. Ours, we are on rolling admission here at Anderson, and so we're continually accepting applications, reviewing applications, and then getting decisions out to students. For us, each student's timeline could be a little bit different. We don't have a set date that our students would decision. It could be throughout the year. And so the short answer there for me would be, as you get in your documents for admission, then that would be reviewed by our admission committee, and then decision would be given, decision is made.
Yeah. So we look a little bit different at Queens, which I think is good to get two different perspectives here. So we do not have rolling admissions, and what that means for students, if you're not familiar, is that we hold all of our decisions until after the deadline. So for example, our first deadline is November 1st. That is an early decision binding deadline. We will have some students apply by that deadline. Most of our students will apply by our early action deadline of December 1st. So if you apply early action to Queens, even as a student athlete, you are not going to hear official decision from the admissions office until right at the end of December, before we leave for our winter holiday. It doesn't matter if you submit everything on the day the application opens, August 1st, you are still going to wait until after that decision. That being said, specifically for our student athletes, our coaches will, they come to me, I work as our athletics liaison in the office, and they'll say, hey, I have Mark Fox as a recruit. He is getting all of his stuff in. It's the beginning of September. It's September, whatever today is, 15th. Can you take a look at him and tell me kind of his admissibility? And so I will take a look at Mark's application, and I'll do what we call a soft pre-read. And I will tell coach, hey, Mark looks pretty good. I don't see any red flags or any reason that he wouldn't be admitted. And he might even receive maybe in this range of merit-based scholarship. And so what that does for the coach then is allows coach to go back to Mark and say, Mark, I've talked with admissions. I feel really good about this. I kind of know where you're at on a merit-based standpoint. So I can then offer you a certain scholarship. And probably that scholarship, like Mark mentioned earlier, is made up of athletic, academic, or other ways to make college affordable. So the benefit for applying earlier and getting things in is that the coach can then have more informed decisions or more informed conversations with you as a student. So while you won't hear from the admissions office necessarily until after that deadline, you will probably hear from your coach about their comfortability with your application file. How about you, Mark? What are you guys working with over at PC?
Yeah, we're much more like Queens, and I guess a blast from the past here story. So me as an admissions guy, I actually signed to play football here at PC before I was actually admitted, which does happen from time to time, especially for deadline-driven schools. So we do that soft review as well, and intend to give the coach some information to go back with. And sometimes it is regarding scholarships, but sometimes it's about admission. Sometimes we have students who aren't quite admissible yet, and we ask for additional information, and we work with that student and that student athlete and that coach to maybe help them make themselves a little bit more admissible. And sometimes we have to take students to committee. And so we start building that case to do that. But yes, I would say that process is not necessarily dependent upon, the application itself or the application deadlines.
Yeah.
Got a couple questions in the feed here. One is, when can colleges see the NCAA eligibility information on a student athlete, and do coaches request that information if student athletes have it sent to coaches. Anybody want to take that? I do feel we do work independently on, at least for admission requirements. Those materials will be sent directly to the admission office, whereas you will also be sending documents to Eligibility Center. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the athletics department, so to William's point, you're submitting all those documents to the Eligibility Center to be rendered eligible with athletics, and then you're sending them separately to the admissions office to be considered for admission. We do not send each other information. I don't receive anything from the Eligibility Center. We don't send them anything from the admissions office. You have to submit them to separate places. To my understanding, once you create that Eligibility Center profile and you're submitting your documents, and the colleges, the athletics departments can pull them over so that you can see them there. And I think the second part of the question was kind of asking, will coaches let me know that I need to submit them, or am I going to be asked for them? I think it kind of depends on the institution. If you're a top recruit and they really want you, they're going to do whatever they have to do to get you in, and they'll ask you for that. They'll say, William, come on, get the stuff in. You'll hear from the compliance officer, come on, get your stuff in. But I think in general, you should take it upon yourself to get those things done. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, we have a pretty good relationship with compliance, and typically we work together on some of these documents. Like, for example, if we are missing something in admissions and compliance has it, because we accept unofficials during our admissions process, they can sometimes supply us with that. Also, during our initial review, our athletic review, we take unofficials that way. And so we can start piecing together documents, see what's missing, see what's out there. And so I think that's been good for us. Is I can pick up the phone and call compliance. Hey, do you have a test score for this student? Or have they submitted their transcript to you? And we're able to work together. And the coaches do a great job of helping complete files and applications and help you guys through the process as well.
Another question in the feed is talking about specifically this year for 2021 graduates and the opportunities this year relative to others, I would assume based on COVID and having scholarships, I guess, extended and eligibility extended. Says, as a counselor, I've heard this concern from parents and would like to be informed. I will just say, I think it is a real concern as far as spots. I mean, even when you're talking about even walk-on opportunities, a team is ultimately got to have some type of chemistry. And so there's only so many spots that are going to be available. I don't really have any great insight into this other than this year could be a little bit more limited with the amount of scholarships coaches have available for students versus other years. Jasmine or Mark, do y'all have any thoughts on that?
Same thing. I think it's going to be limited, but I don't necessarily have any metrics or anything around that. Maybe Mark.
Yeah, so we've heard a lot of different things. I mean, rosters and scholarship limits have been expanded, but at the same time, it's up to the institution whether or not they honor those scholarships. And so some institutions, have some play in what they're going to do there. At the same time, the student has a choice in this as well. Does a student who's not necessarily going to play professional sports want to stay an extra year to play sports when they can graduate and go to graduate school or go get that first job? So I think that there are policies in place right now to allow these students to have additional years of eligibility. But will they take it? That's the big question right now. And I think you're going to see a little bit of both. I think you're going to see some stay, and I think you're going to see others move on to graduate school and careers. So I think you got to lean in the coach. And I think you got to speak to the coach and really get a feel for how many people they're looking for this year, what those returners look like, and because every school is going to be a little bit different on that front.
I think maybe there's time for one more question, William. Do you see any more?
We've got two. I think we can honestly get them both in. One's a little more lengthy than the other. One is do offices in athletics encourage students to apply early, file FAFSA early, talk about various academic scholarship dates. And the question is, who is actively recruiting a student, you or athletics or both? I would say both. And we all want you at our institutions. And I think all of us would agree that earlier the better. And I think even your coaches will appreciate that, because oftentimes coaches may not know exactly all of these other steps, FAFSA, competitive scholarships that you might be eligible for that would really help out the team if you were able to get a competitive scholarship, things like that. So I would say the earlier the better in the admission process. And I know you may not have made up your mind, so it may be a couple schools that you might be trying to complete the application process with, but yes, the earlier the better. Any other comments on that? Okay.
That's it. Totally agree. Yeah.
Submit the FAFSA. Please submit the FAFSA.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. FAFSA opens up October 1. So
Right.
everybody can go ahead and jump on that October 1. It'll be one less thing you got to do.
Exactly. Thank y'all so much for joining.
Yeah. Last question is on submitting a test score. Would you retake it, or if you're waiting on a higher score? For Anderson, we will use the test score that helps you the most. And so that would be up to the student.
Yep. Same thing. We're test optional, so you wouldn't have to submit one at all. But if you did, we take the highest. We want the best for you.
Yep.
Same here. Same here at PC.
Awesome.
Thanks, y'all. We appreciate you joining on. I think Kenneth's maybe going to come on and cut us off here right at 2:45. So thanks for attending the session, and talk to you soon.
Yeah, guys, just quick reminders to take the survey after the session has ended. Again, visit www.CACRAO.com to sign up for more sessions. And then also, if you need to kind of review of what this session was about, that session will be recorded and placed on that website as well. But yeah, hope everybody has a good day.